June 1980. Prince Charles walks through Highgrove House for the first time. 9 bedrooms, Georgian architecture, 900 acres of farmland, 2 hours from London, deep in Gloucestershire. Perfect for a future king who needs a family home. Perfect for a man who wants privacy. Perfect for a man whose true love lives just 11 miles away. Charles buys it immediately. 1 year later, he'll bring his new wife here, a 20-year-old girl named Diana Spencer, who's never lived in the countryside, who loves London, who hates being alone. She'll call it a prison. And for the next 15 years, Highgrove will become the site where one of history's most watched marriages collapses, where a prince escapes into his gardens while his wife spirals into bulimia and despair, where an affair is conducted while children play upstairs, where a woman tries to kill herself because she's so desperately lonely. But that's not the story you've been told. You've been told about the affair, the divorce, Diana's death, Charles and Camilla's scandal. What you haven't been told is why Highgrove mattered, how a country house became the stage for this tragedy, why Charles bought this specific property, what he did there for 40 years while the world watched his marriage burn. This is the untold story of Highgrove House, a Georgian manor that was supposed to be a sanctuary and became a symbol of everything a king couldn't control: his heart, his wife, his reputation. If you're drawn to stories about estates that witness history's most intimate failures, about obsessions that can't save what matters most, and about how places shape the people who own them, please like and subscribe. These investigations take months of research. Your support makes them possible. Thank you for being here. Let's begin where every royal story begins, with duty, pressure, and a child who never asked to be king. November 14, 1948. A boy is born at Buckingham Palace. His name is Charles Philip Arthur George. He is heir to the British throne from the moment he draws breath. His mother, Princess Elizabeth, becomes queen 4 years later when her father, King George VI, dies suddenly. February 6, 1952. Charles is 3 years old. His mother becomes Queen Elizabeth II. Charles becomes heir apparent, Duke of Cornwall, future king. His childhood is lonely, not in the way most children are lonely. Charles has nannies, tutors, security, staff. What he doesn't have: warmth. Queen Elizabeth II is devoted to duty, not affection. She sees Charles at scheduled times: breakfast sometimes, tea occasionally, bedtime rarely. Prince Philip, his father, is emotionally distant. Philip believes in toughening boys up, no coddling, no weakness. When Charles cries, Philip tells him to stop. When Charles is sensitive, Philip mocks him. When Charles shows interest in art, poetry, gardening, things Philip considers soft, Philip ridicules him. Charles is sent to boarding school at age 8, first Cheam School, then Gordonstown, a brutal Scottish boarding school where boys sleep in unheated dormitories, take cold showers, run cross-country in freezing rain. Philip went there. He loved it. It made him tough. Charles hates it. He's bullied. Other boys mock him for being soft, privileged, weak. Teachers report he's often found crying alone. But he endures, because that's what heirs do. What Charles learns from childhood: emotions are weakness. Duty is everything. You don't marry for love, you marry for the crown. And one more thing: if you're unhappy, you escape into something you can control. For Charles, that's nature, gardens, soil. Plants don't judge you. They don't expect anything but care. This shapes everything. Summer 1970. Charles is 21, on leave from Royal Navy service. At a polo match, he meets Camilla Shand. She's 23, confident, funny, unpretentious, from an aristocratic family but not royal. and they click immediately. Camilla doesn't treat Charles like a prince. She teases him, laughs at his jokes, shares his interests, countryside, horses, hunting. Most importantly, she doesn't care about his title. She likes him for him. For Charles, who spent his entire life being treated as the heir rather than a person, this is intoxicating. They begin dating. For 18 months, 1970 through 1972, Charles is the happiest he's ever been. He talks about marrying her. Friends say he's in love. But there's a problem. Camilla has a past. She'd previously dated Andrew Parker Bowles, an Army officer. The relationship was on and off, but Camilla wasn't a virgin when she met Charles. In 1970, this matters. The future king's wife must be, in the royal family's view, a virgin, someone pure, someone without romantic history. The Queen and Prince Philip make their position clear. Camilla is unsuitable. Charles is devastated, but he doesn't fight them. He's been trained his entire life to obey. March 1973, Charles deploys on Royal Navy duty, a 7-month tour. While he's gone, Camilla makes a decision. She can't wait indefinitely for Charles to defy his family. Andrew Parker Bowles has proposed. July 4, 1973, Camilla marries Andrew Parker Bowles. Charles finds out while at sea. He's heartbroken. Friends describe him as shattered. He believed Camilla would wait. She didn't. This is the defining wound of Charles's life. Not losing Camilla to death or circumstance, losing her because he wasn't strong enough to fight for her. He never fully recovers.
Throughout the 1970s, Charles dates various women. Aristocratic, appropriate, beautiful. None of them are Camilla, and the pressure mounts. Charles is in his 30s. The heir needs a wife, needs heirs. The line of succession must be secured. The Queen's advisors make it clear Charles needs to find someone acceptable and marry her, soon. The criteria: aristocratic background, not royal but noble, virgin, absolutely required, young, enough to marry, young enough to be molded, pretty, will photograph well, compliant, won't challenge royal protocol. Charles begins looking, not for love, for someone who meets the criteria, and in 1980, he finds her. Spring 1980, Charles is 31, still unmarried, still under pressure. He decides, I need a country estate, somewhere private, somewhere I can raise a family when I finally marry. Royal residences, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Sandringham, Balmoral, are official, formal, watched. Charles wants a home that's his, not the crown's, his. He starts looking in Gloucester. Why Gloucester specifically? Because that's where Camilla lives. Camilla Parker Bowles, née Shand, and her husband Andrew live at Bolehide Manor in Wiltshire, just 11 miles from Highgrove. This is not coincidence. Charles has maintained a friendship with Camilla throughout the 1970s. They're just friends, or so they claim. Andrew doesn't seem to mind. The Parkers Bowles and Charles socialize regularly. Charles finds a property, Highgrove House. Highgrove Estate, built 1796, Georgian manor house, located near Tetbury, Gloucester, 900 acres, house plus farmland, 9 bedrooms, gardens in need of work, price £865,000, roughly $6 million today. The Duchy of Cornwall, Charles's estate as Prince of Wales, purchases it in June 1980. Why Highgrove? Official reason, private country estate for future family. Real reason, 11 miles from Camilla. Charles begins renovations immediately. He's thinking about marriage now, thinking about children, thinking about a wife, just not thinking about love, because the woman he loves is married to someone else. Summer 1980. Charles is a guest at a country house party. One of the attendees is Lady Diana Spencer. Charles has met her before. She's the younger sister of his ex-girlfriend, Sarah Spencer. But he hasn't paid much attention. She was a teenager then. Now she's 19, pretty, shy, aristocratic. Her father is Earl Spencer, old nobility, impeccable lineage, and she's working as a kindergarten teacher in London. Someone mentions to Charles, Diana Spencer is single, from a good family, very sweet, would photograph beautifully. Charles is intrigued, not because he's attracted to her, but because she meets all the criteria. He invites her to Balmoral that autumn. Diana is nervous, overwhelmed. She's never been in this world. Royal protocol, constant scrutiny, formality. But she's kind to Charles. She listens when he talks about his interests, architecture, organic farming, philosophy. Most importantly, she's clearly innocent. No romantic past, no scandals. The Queen approves. Prince Philip approves. The press loves her. She's photogenic, relatable, not intimidating. Charles makes a calculation. Diana Spencer is the right choice on paper. She'll do her duty. She's young enough to be shaped into a proper royal wife. She clearly admires him. Love? That will come later. Or maybe it won't. But duty comes first. February 6, 1981. Charles proposes to Diana. Her response, yes, please. His response, in the interview, whatever in love means. He actually says this, on camera. Diana laughs nervously. It's an odd thing to say, but she's 19, naive, and believes marrying a prince is a fairy tale. She has no idea what's coming. July 29, 1981. St. Paul's Cathedral, London. The wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer. 750 million people watch worldwide. Diana arrives in a horse-drawn carriage. Her dress is ivory silk, 25-foot train, puffed sleeves, 10,000 pearls, designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel. She looks like a fairy tale princess. The ceremony is flawless. Diana stumbles over Charles's names, calls him Philip Charles instead of Charles Philip. Charles promises to share his worldly goods instead of thy worldly goods. Minor mistakes, endearing. They kiss on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. The crowd roars. The world believes this is a love story. It's not.
The honeymoon. First signs of trouble. The honeymoon begins on the Royal Yacht Britannia, Mediterranean cruise, then continues at Balmoral, Scotland. On the yacht, Diana finds photographs of Camilla. Not hidden, just there, in Charles's belongings. She asks about them. Charles dismisses her concerns. Camilla is an old friend, nothing more. Diana wants to believe him. But then, the cufflinks. Charles wears cufflinks engraved with intertwined C's. Diana assumes they're his initials. They're not. They're C and C, Charles and Camilla, a gift from Camilla years earlier. Diana is upset. Charles is annoyed by her insecurity. At Balmoral, it gets worse. The royal family's routine, hunting, shooting, fishing, long walks in cold rain, formal dinners, stiff conversation. Diana hates it. She's a city girl. She doesn't hunt, she doesn't fish. She finds the countryside boring and the formalities suffocating. Charles is baffled. This is what he loves. Nature, countryside, quiet. They have nothing in common. By the end of the honeymoon, Diana is crying every day. Charles attributes it to hormones. Diana is already pregnant, discovered during the honeymoon. He doesn't ask what's wrong, doesn't try to comfort her. Instead, he retreats into books, sketching, planning Highgrove's gardens. The pattern that will define their marriage is already established. Diana cries, Charles withdraws. September 1981. The honeymoon ends. Charles and Diana return to England. They need to decide where to live. Options: London, Kensington Palace, their official residence, convenient, close to everything. Highgrove, Charles's country estate, remote, quiet, isolated. Diana assumes they'll live primarily in London. She loves London. Her friends are there. Shopping, restaurants, theaters, life. Charles has other plans. He wants them at Highgrove. It's private, away from press, away from protocol, and close to Camilla. Diana moves to Highgrove. She hates it immediately. Why Diana hates Highgrove? 1. Isolation. Highgrove is 2 hours from London. Diana's friends can't just pop over. She's alone all day while Charles works or gardens. 2. Boredom. There's nothing to do. No shopping, no cafes, no entertainment, just countryside. Diana doesn't ride horses, doesn't hunt, doesn't fish. She finds the countryside boring and the formality suffocating. Clothes. Georgian houses are drafty. Highgrove has poor heating, old heating. Diana is constantly cold. She asks for better heating. Charles refuses. It's wasteful, bad for the environment. 4. Camilla's ghost. Charles talks about Camilla constantly. Camilla says. Camilla thinks. Camilla and I used to. Diana feels like Camilla is the third person in the marriage. She's right. 5. Staff. Many of Highgrove's staff worked for Charles before the marriage. They're loyal to him, not Diana. Diana feels like a guest in her own home. She begs Charles, "Can we spend more time in London?" Charles, "Highgrove is our home. You need to adjust." Diana is trapped. June 21, 1982. Prince William Arthur Philip Louis is born at St. Mary's Hospital, London. Diana is ecstatic. Finally, someone who needs her, someone to love, someone to care for. Charles is pleased. The succession is secured. He has an heir. For a few months, things are better. Diana focuses on William. Charles is proud of his son. But the underlying problems remain. Diana is still lonely at Highgrove. Charles still talks about Camilla. Charles still spends hours in his gardens while Diana sits alone. And something new emerges. Diana is struggling with postpartum depression and bulimia. Diana's bulimia begins. Late 1982, Diana starts binge eating and purging. She'll eat large amounts of food, entire boxes of cereal, loaves of bread, then make herself vomit. Why? Control. Her life is out of control. She can't control Charles, can't control the press, can't control royal protocol, but she can control her body. And attention. Maybe if Charles notices she's sick, he'll pay attention to her. He doesn't. When staff mention Diana's not eating properly, Charles dismisses it. She's adjusting to motherhood. She'll be fine. Diana is not fine. September 15, 1984. Prince Henry Charles Albert David, Harry, is born at St. Mary's Hospital, London. Diana is ecstatic. Finally, someone who needs her, someone to love, someone to care for. Charles is pleased. The succession is secured. He has an heir. For a few months, things are better. Diana focuses on William. Charles is proud of his son. But the underlying problems remain. Diana is still lonely at Highgrove. Charles still talks about Camilla. Charles still spends hours in his gardens while Diana sits alone. And something new emerges. Diana is struggling with postpartum depression and bulimia. While Diana struggles inside Highgrove, Charles is transforming the grounds. His vision? Create Britain's premier organic garden. No chemicals, no pesticides, sustainable farming, wildflower meadows, cottage gardens, an arboretum. He spends hours every day in the gardens, not just directing, actually working, planting, weeding, planning. His staff report, Charles is the happiest when he's gardening. He talks to his plants. He's particular about every detail. One famous story,
Charles tells staff he wants his toilet paper ironed flat before use, not a crease. This becomes public. People mock him, the prince who needs his loo roll ironed. But it reveals something deeper. Charles needs control. In his life, he controls almost nothing. His schedule is dictated, his duties are prescribed, his marriage is unhappy. But in his gardens, he controls everything. The soil composition, the plant placement, the organic methods. The gardens become his therapy, but they also become his escape from Diana. Instead of spending time with his wife, he gardens. Instead of talking about their problems, he plants roses. Diana resents the gardens. She tells friends, he cares more about his plants than he cares about me. She's not wrong.
By 1986, Charles and Diana's marriage is dead in all but name. They barely speak. They sleep in separate bedrooms. When they appear together publicly, it's a performance. Charles makes a decision. If the marriage is over emotionally, why deny himself the one person who actually understands him? He contacts Camilla. Her marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles is similarly strained. Andrew has affairs. Camilla knows. Their marriage is an arrangement, not a love match. Charles and Camilla begin seeing each other again, not publicly, discreetly, at Highgrove when Diana is in London, at Camilla's house when Andrew is away. They're careful, but Diana knows. How Diana discovers the affair. Late 1986, Diana finds more evidence. Phone bills showing calls to Camilla's number, dozens of calls, some lasting hours. Charles disappearing for walks that last 3 hours. Charles mentioning he's visiting friends, but staff quietly confirming he's at Camilla's house. Diana confronts him. Charles doesn't deny it. He doesn't confirm it either. He just says, "You're being paranoid." But Diana knows. She absolutely knows. She spirals. For 6 years, Diana lives in a marriage that's openly failing. What she experiences? Bulimia worsens. She's binging and purging multiple times per day. Staff find her vomiting in bathrooms. Her weight drops dramatically. Suicide attempts. Diana later admits, in interviews, to multiple suicide attempts during this period. Throwing herself downstairs at Sandringham while pregnant with William. Cutting her arms and legs with razors. Throwing herself against a glass cabinet at Kensington Palace. These aren't serious attempts to die, they're cries for help. Charles's response? Annoyance. He tells her she's being dramatic. He tells her to get help, but doesn't support her getting help. Isolation at Highgrove. Diana spends weeks at Highgrove while Charles is in London or visiting Camilla. She sits alone in the house. Staff feel sorry for her but can't help. They work for Charles. Public appearances. When Charles and Diana appear together, they smile for cameras, but body language experts notice. They never touch. Diana looks miserable. The press starts noticing. Headlines: "Is the marriage in trouble?" The palace denies everything. Why don't they divorce? 1. The Queen forbids it. Divorce is scandalous. The heir to the throne divorced? Unthinkable. Queen Elizabeth's own uncle, Edward VIII, abdicated to marry a divorcee. The scandal nearly destroyed the monarchy. The Queen insists Charles and Diana must make it work. 2. Public opinion. Diana is beloved. The public adores her. She's relatable, warm, beautiful. Charles is seen as stiff, cold, boring. If they divorce, public sympathy will be with Diana. Charles will be blamed. 3. The children. William and Harry are young, born in 1982 and 1984. Divorce would devastate them. So Charles and Diana stay married, but live separate lives. Charles at Highgrove with his gardens and Camilla, Diana in London with her sons and her charity work. It's miserable for both of them, but it can't last. 1992. Queen Elizabeth later calls it her annus horribilis, horrible year. Why? March 1992, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, Duke and Duchess of York, separate. April 1992, Princess Anne divorces Captain Mark Phillips. June 1992, Diana,
Her True Story by Andrew Morton is published. This book, based on secret interviews with Diana, reveals everything: Charles's affair with Camilla, Diana's bulimia, Diana's suicide attempts, the loveless marriage, Charles's emotional cruelty. The palace is shocked. Diana has broken the ultimate rule: never complain, never explain. The public is shocked. The fairy tale was a lie? Charles is furious. Diana has humiliated him publicly. August 20th, 1992. Transcripts of private phone calls between Charles and Camilla are leaked, the Camillagate tapes. In them, Charles tells Camilla he wants to live in her trousers and be her tampon. It's mortifying. The future king recorded saying sexually explicit things to his mistress. November 20th, 1992. Windsor Castle catches fire, extensive damage. December 9th, 1992. Prime Minister John Major announces in Parliament, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. The marriage is over.
December 9th, 1992. The separation is official. But separation is not divorce. Charles and Diana remain legally married. Why? The Queen hopes they'll reconcile. She pressures both of them. Try again, for the children, for the crown. They don't. Instead, they wage war through the media. Both Charles and Diana give interviews. November 1995. Diana sits for a BBC Panorama interview with Martin Bashir. 25 million people watch in Britain alone. Diana speaks directly to camera, calm, composed, devastating. Key quotes: on Charles's affair with Camilla, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. On her own affairs, she admits to an affair with James Hewitt. Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him. On Charles becoming king, I don't think many people will want him to be king. The impact is seismic. The public overwhelmingly sympathizes with Diana. She's the wronged woman. Charles is the unfaithful husband. Charles's reputation is destroyed. June 1994. Charles gives his own interview, a documentary with Jonathan Dimbleby. He admits the affair with Camilla, but only after his marriage to Diana had irretrievably broken down. It doesn't help. Public opinion remains firmly with Diana. The Queen has had enough. December 1995. Queen Elizabeth sends letters to both Charles and Diana. Divorce immediately. The separation has dragged on for 3 years. The public spectacle is damaging the monarchy. The divorce negotiations begin. August 28, 1996. Charles and Diana's divorce is finalized. Terms: Diana receives £17 million lump sum, roughly $35 million today. £400,000 per year for private office expenses. Keeps her apartments at Kensington Palace. Retains jewelry given to her during marriage. Remains mother to William and Harry, joint custody. Diana loses her Royal Highness title, becomes Diana, Princess of Wales. Official role in the royal family, security detail, later reinstated. It's not about prestige, it's about respect. The title meant she was protected, honored, taken seriously. Without it, she's just Diana, ex-wife, outsider. Charles gets Highgrove, which remains his, freedom to see Camilla openly, though not publicly, yet. William and Harry, joint custody, but he keeps Highgrove as their country home. After 15 years of marriage, it's over. Diana moves on. Charity work, travel, dating. Charles stays at Highgrove, with Camilla visiting more openly now. For 1 year, they're both free. Then, tragedy strikes. August 31st, 1997, 12:23 a.m. Paris time. Diana's car crashes in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. She's with Dodi Fayed, her boyfriend, Henri Paul, driver, and Trevor Rees-Jones, bodyguard. The car is being chased by paparazzi on motorcycles.
Henri Paul is driving over 60 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour tunnel. He's drunk, blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit. The car hits a pillar. Henri Paul dies instantly. Dodi Fayed dies instantly. Trevor Rees-Jones survives, severely injured. Diana is alive, but critically injured. Paramedics rush her to Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital. 4 a.m., Diana dies, internal injuries, age 37. Charles receives the news. Charles is at Balmoral Castle, Scotland, with William and Harry. The boys are asleep. Charles is woken around 1 a.m. British time with news of the crash. Diana is alive but injured. Charles waits for updates. 4 a.m. The call comes. Diana is dead. Charles has to wake William, 15, and Harry, 12, and tell them their mother is dead. He does this alone. Queen Elizabeth doesn't come. Philip doesn't come. Charles tells his sons himself. William and Harry are shattered. Charles is in shock. Whatever their marriage was, whatever bitterness existed, Diana was still the mother of his children, still someone he once cared for. And now she's gone. The public reaction is volcanic. Britain erupts in grief. Millions place flowers outside Kensington Palace. People weep in the streets, and they blame Charles. The narrative, Charles drove Diana away with his affair, his cruelty, his coldness, and now she's dead. Camilla goes into hiding. She's receiving death threats. The public sees her as the woman who destroyed Diana. Charles is vilified. September 6, 1997, Diana's funeral at Westminster Abbey. 2 billion people watch worldwide. William and Harry walk behind Diana's coffin, 12-year-old Harry crying openly. Charles walks with them. At the funeral, Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, gives a eulogy that's a thinly veiled attack on the royal family, accusing them of destroying Diana. The crowd inside Westminster Abbey applauds. This never happens at royal events. Applause in Westminster Abbey is unthinkable, but they applaud an indictment of Charles and the family. Charles knows his reputation is destroyed. After Diana's death, Charles retreats to Highgrove, not because he wants to, because he has to. Balmoral is too formal. The Queen is there. Protocol is there. London, Clarence House, St. James's Palace, is too public. Press everywhere, paparazzi, scrutiny. Highgrove is the only place Charles can hide. But Highgrove is also where the worst of his marriage happened. Diana's loneliness, her bulimia, the affair with Camilla, the fights. Highgrove is haunted now, not by Diana's ghost, but by Charles's guilt. Charles and his sons at Highgrove. William and Harry spend weekends and holidays at Highgrove with Charles. This is difficult for all of them. For William and Harry, Highgrove reminds them of their mother. She was miserable here, and now she's dead. For Charles, he's trying to be a better father than he was a husband, but he doesn't know how. He's emotionally distant. That's how he was raised. Philip never hugged him. Elizabeth never showed affection. Charles tries. He takes William and Harry on walks around Highgrove's grounds. He shows them the gardens. He talks about organic farming. William is polite but distant. Harry is angrier. Harry blames his father, not entirely, but partially, for Diana's death. If Charles hadn't had an affair, if he'd treated Diana better, maybe she'd still be alive. Charles knows this, and he doesn't know how to fix it, so he escapes into the gardens. After Diana's death, Charles's garden work at Highgrove becomes even more consuming. He's out there every day, not just supervising, working, digging, planting, pruning. Staff report Charles seems calmer in the gardens, more at peace. Why? Because in the gardens, Charles has control. He can't control what the public thinks of him, can't control his son's grief, can't control his guilt. But he can control soil pH, plant placement, compost ratios. The gardens are therapy.
During these 8 years, Charles transforms Highgrove into one of Britain's most famous organic estates. Projects completed? The cottage garden. Traditional English cottage garden. Roses, lavender, delphiniums, no chemicals, all organic. The wildflower meadow. 120 acres converted to wildflower meadows. Native species, habitat for pollinators. Charles becomes obsessed with declining bee populations. He plants specifically for bees. The Arboretum. Rare trees from around the world. Charles labels each one personally. The Kitchen Garden. Produces vegetables for Highgrove's kitchens, all organic, surplus sold to local markets. The Stumpery. A garden made from tree stumps and roots. Sounds bizarre, looks beautiful. Mosses, ferns, shade plants growing in and around stumps. The Sanctuary. A small building surrounded by yew hedges. Charles goes here to meditate, pray, think. Duchy Originals. 1990, Charles launches Duchy Originals, a food brand selling organic products from Highgrove and other Duchy of Cornwall estates. Products? Biscuits, preserves, meats, dairy. All profits go to charity. By 2005, Duchy Originals generates millions annually. Profits fund Charles's charitable foundation. This is Charles's vindication. The world mocked him in the 1980s for talking about organic farming, climate change, sustainability. Now, in the 2000s, organic food is mainstream. Climate change is recognized. Sustainability is critical. Charles was right, 20 years early, but right. The gardens prove it. But there's one thing the gardens can't fix: his relationship with Camilla. By 2005, Charles has been separated from Diana for 13 years. She's been dead for 8 years. Camilla has been waiting. They've been together, discreetly, since 1997, but they can't marry. Public opinion is still against Camilla. Gradually, attitudes soften. The press starts reframing Camilla. Not the villain who destroyed Diana, just a woman who loved Charles. William and Harry meet Camilla privately. They're polite. They don't love her, but they don't hate her. They want their father to be happy. The Queen gives her consent. April 9, 2005, Charles marries Camilla Parker Bowles in a civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall. It's low-key, no Westminster Abbey, no televised ceremony, just family, close friends, quiet. Camilla becomes Duchess of Cornwall, not Princess of Wales. That title is still associated with Diana. Charles is 56, Camilla is 57. They've loved each other for 35 years, been married to other people, caused a scandal, destroyed reputations. But now they're together, legally, and Camilla moves into Highgrove. Camilla at Highgrove. Camilla transforms Highgrove from Charles's bachelor sanctuary into a home again. She redecorates, adds warmth, softer fabrics, brighter colors. She's comfortable in the countryside, unlike Diana. She rides horses, she gardens alongside Charles. For the first time in decades, Charles seems content. But Highgrove's past doesn't disappear. Diana's ghost lingers, not literally, but in memory. Rooms where she cried, gardens she hated, the house where she was so desperately unhappy. Camilla knows this. She's sensitive to it. She doesn't erase Diana. She just coexists with the memory. And Charles, for the first time since Diana died, starts to relax. With Camilla at his side, Charles dedicates himself fully to Highgrove's transformation. His mission? Prove that organic, sustainable farming can be profitable, that you don't need chemicals,
that biodiversity matters. The projects expand. Highgrove's 900 acres are fully organic by 2010. What Charles grows? Wheat, barley for Duchy Originals products, vegetables sold at farmers markets, livestock, rare breed cattle, sheep, all organic. The revenue? By 2015, Highgrove's farm generates over £1 million annually in revenue. All profits go to the Prince's Foundation, Charles's charity. This is significant. Charles proves organic farming isn't just ethical, it's economically viable. 2008. Charles begins offering limited public tours of Highgrove's gardens. The rules: pre-booked only, no walk-ins, limited to 25 people per tour, £27.50 per person, roughly $35. Tours run April to October. Led by Highgrove staff, Charles doesn't participate. What visitors see: the cottage garden, the wildflower meadow, the kitchen garden, the stumpery, the arboretum. Visitors don't see the house interior, private, Charles or Camilla. They're rarely there during tours. Reviews: beautiful gardens, clearly a labor of love. You can see Charles's personality in every plant. Surprisingly moving, these gardens saved him. That last review is closest to the truth. 2010. Charles publishes The Elements of Organic Gardening with Stephanie Donaldson, a how-to guide based on Highgrove's methods, a bestseller in Britain. 2013. Alan Titchmarsh, TV gardener, films a documentary at Highgrove, The Royal Gardens. Charles appears on camera, walking through the gardens, explaining his philosophy. Key moment. Titchmarsh asks, "What do these gardens mean to you?" Charles pauses. Long pause. Then, they're where I can breathe, where I can think, where I can be myself without all the rest of it. The rest of it equals royal duty, public scrutiny, scandal, guilt. The gardens are Charles's therapy. Everyone watching understands this. As climate change becomes undeniable, Charles's decades of environmental advocacy are vindicated. He's been talking about organic farming since 1980s, climate change since 1990s, biodiversity loss since 1990s, plastic pollution since 2000s. For 30 years he was mocked, the eccentric prince who talks to plants, Charles the crank, out of touch with reality. By 2020, he's a visionary. Greta Thunberg quotes him. David Attenborough praises him. Climate scientists credit him with raising awareness decades before it was mainstream. Highgrove is the proof. 900 acres thriving without chemicals, native species returning, carbon sequestration working. Charles was right all along. But being right doesn't erase the past. September 8, 2022, 3:10 p.m. Queen Elizabeth II dies at Balmoral Castle, Scotland. She is 96 years old. She reigned for 70 years, the longest in British history. At the moment of her death, Charles becomes king. Not when he's crowned, immediately. The king is dead, long live the king. Charles is 73 years old. He's been heir for 70 years, longer than anyone in British history. And now he's King Charles III. The accession. September 10, 2022, Charles is formally proclaimed king at St. James Palace. Charles's first address to the nation, televised. He speaks of his mother's legacy, his duty, his commitment to service. He also mentions, "My life will of course change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply." Translation: he has to step back from his environmental work, from Highgrove's daily operations, because being king is a full-time job. What happens to Highgrove? Legally, Highgrove belongs to the Duchy of Cornwall. When Charles became king, his son William became Duke of Cornwall. Technically, Highgrove now belongs to William, but in practice, Charles retains personal use of Highgrove. It's his home. William doesn't need it. He lives at Adelaide Cottage, Windsor. The question, what will Charles do with Highgrove now that he's king?
As king, Charles faces an impossible schedule: state duties, constitutional responsibilities, Commonwealth obligations, public appearances. He can't spend hours gardening at Highgrove anymore. So what happens to the estate he spent 42 years perfecting? The succession plan. Charles has made his intentions clear through palace sources. 1. Highgrove remains a working organic farm. Even if Charles can't oversee it daily, the farm continues, staff run it, profits still go to charity. 2. Garden tours continue. The public can still visit, pre-booked. Revenue supports maintenance. 3. Camilla remains involved. Queen Consort Camilla, her official title since Charles became king, visits Highgrove regularly. She oversees renovations, updates. 4. Eventually, Highgrove may go to William or Harry. Charles hasn't decided, but one of his sons will likely inherit it. Or 5. Highgrove could become a museum. After Charles dies, Highgrove could open fully to the public, a permanent memorial to Charles's environmental legacy. But for now, Charles holds on, because Highgrove is more than an estate. It's his life's work. For 42 years, Charles poured himself into Highgrove. What does this obsession tell us? 1. Control. Charles's life has been defined by lack of control. He didn't choose to be king, didn't choose when to ascend, couldn't marry the woman he loved, Camilla, when he wanted. But at Highgrove, he controlled everything, every plant, every path, every decision. Gardens gave him what royalty couldn't: autonomy. 2. Escape. When his marriage to Diana collapsed, Charles escaped into gardening. Instead of facing his problems, he dug holes, planted trees, obsessed over compost. This isn't healthy. Therapy would have been healthier. Communication would have been healthier. But Charles was never taught to deal with emotions, so he buried them, literally, in the soil. 3. Redemption. After Diana died, Charles used Highgrove to rebuild his reputation. He couldn't undo the affair, couldn't undo Diana's suffering, but he could prove he was right about something: organic farming, sustainability, climate change. Highgrove became his apology to the world. Not for Diana, he never apologized for that, but for being dismissed, mocked, underestimated. See, I was right all along. 4. Legacy. Charles knows he'll never be remembered like his mother. Elizabeth reigned 70 years. She's beloved. She's an icon. Charles will be remembered for marrying Diana, the affair with Camilla, Diana's death, finally becoming king at 73. He wants to be remembered for more. Highgrove is that more. 900 acres of proof that he cared about something beyond himself, that he was right when everyone said he was wrong, that he mattered. For 42 years, Charles invested in Highgrove. Not just money, though that too. What he spent: financial. Purchase, 1980, £865,000 equals $6 million today. Renovations, 1980 to 2022, estimated £25 million plus, includes house renovations, garden creation, organic farm infrastructure, staff salaries, gardeners, farm workers, ongoing maintenance. Total, £30 million equals roughly $150 million.
cumulative inflation adjusted. Revenue generated, Duchy Originals, £300 million 1990 to 2022. Garden Tours, £5 million 2008 to 2022. All profits to charity. Charles never personally profited. Time: 42 years, 1980 to 2022. Multiple hours per day, when possible, spent in gardens. Thousands of hours over decades. Time that could have been spent with Diana when she was alive, with William and Harry when they were young, on other causes. Charles chose gardens over family, repeatedly. Relationships. Diana. Charles's obsession with Highgrove and Camilla destroyed his marriage. Diana died hating Highgrove, the place where she'd been so unhappy. William and Harry. Both sons associate Highgrove with their parents' failed marriage. They visit out of duty, not love for the place. After Charles dies, neither will keep Highgrove as a personal residence. They'll either sell it or turn it into a museum. Charles's 42-year legacy may last one generation beyond him, if that. Reputation. Charles wanted Highgrove to rehabilitate his image. It partially worked. His environmental legacy is secure. He's respected for organic farming advocacy. But he's still remembered primarily for Diana. When people think Charles, they think Diana's husband, Camilla's affair partner, the king who waited 73 years, then maybe the environmental guy. Highgrove couldn't erase the scandal. It just gave him something else to point to. Charles believed, consciously or not, that if he made Highgrove perfect, his life would be perfect. If the gardens were beautiful, maybe the marriage would be beautiful. It didn't work. Why? Because gardens are controllable. People aren't. You can control soil pH. You can't control your wife's happiness. You can choose which plants thrive. You can't choose whether your wife loves you. Charles spent 42 years proving he could create something beautiful, but the thing he most needed to nurture, his marriage, his family, died from neglect. This is the tragedy of Highgrove. Charles saved the soil. He couldn't save his wife. He created biodiversity. He couldn't create intimacy. He proved organic farming works. He couldn't prove love works. The gardens are perfect. The family is broken. Highgrove reveals a truth about human nature. When we can't fix what matters, we obsess over what we can control. Charles couldn't fix his marriage, too complicated, too many failures, so he fixed his gardens instead. It's easier to improve soil than improve relationships. It's easier to plant trees than plant love. It's easier to measure compost ratios than measure emotional health. The gardens gave Charles the illusion of progress. Look how much I've accomplished. The wildflower meadows, the organic farm, the carbon sequestration. But Diana was still miserable, still bulimic, still suicidal, and Charles was still in his gardens. The universal warning. Highgrove is a warning to anyone who escapes into work, hobbies, projects, anything to avoid dealing with difficult emotions. Charles is an extreme example, but the pattern is universal. The husband who works 80-hour weeks to avoid confronting his failing marriage, the parent who obsesses over their children's achievements to avoid their own unfulfillment, the person who renovates their house endlessly to avoid renovating their inner life. We all do this. Charles just did it with 900 acres and a royal budget.
February 2024. King Charles III is diagnosed with cancer. The palace announces the king will step back from public duties while undergoing treatment. Where does Charles go? Highgrove. At 75, battling cancer, Charles returns to the place that's always been his sanctuary. He walks the gardens, slowly now. Age and illness have weakened him. But he still walks them, still checks on plants, still talks to staff about organic methods, because the gardens are all he has that's purely his, not duty, Not obligation, not scandal, just dirt, plants, and 42 years of work. What happens after Charles? Charles is 75. Camilla is 76. Realistically, they have 10 to 15 years left at most. What happens to Highgrove then? Option 1. William inherits it. William is Duke of Cornwall, technically owns it already. He could move in, continue Charles's work, but William won't. William and Catherine prefer Windsor. They have their own lives, their own priorities. Highgrove reminds William of his parents' failed marriage. He'll visit out of respect, but he won't live there. Option 2. Harry inherits it. Harry has more emotional connection to Highgrove than William. He spent more time there as a child, has fonder memories, relatively. But Harry lives in California. He's estranged from the family. He won't return to Britain for Highgrove. Option 3. It becomes a museum. Most likely scenario. After Charles dies, Highgrove opens permanently to the public. Tours expanded, house interior opened, gardens maintained by a trust. Highgrove House, King Charles III's environmental legacy. Gift shop, cafe, educational programs on organic farming. Charles would probably want this. It ensures his work survives, ensures people remember he was right about climate change, sustainability, organic farming. But it also means the one place Charles could be himself, private, away from duty, becomes another tourist attraction. Even in death, Charles can't escape being public property. The final irony. Charles spent 42 years making Highgrove perfect. He succeeded. The gardens are world-class, the organic farm is profitable, the biodiversity is thriving. But the people he built it for, Diana, William, Harry, don't want it. Diana hated it. William won't live there. Harry won't return for it. Charles created a masterpiece no one in his family wants to inherit. Just like his mother created a monarchy his children don't want to participate in. The cycle repeats. If you were moved by this story of obsession that couldn't save what mattered most, of gardens that became escape rather than healing, of a king who could control everything except the people he loved, please like and subscribe. These investigations take months of research. Your support makes them possible. Tell me in the comments, can any amount of success in one area compensate for failure in another? Or are we all just trying to garden our way out of guilt? Thank you for watching.